a topic came up this afternoon, having nothing, I mean, it wasn't my topic, it was the topic of someone who had the question about needing some direction about where to go, where not to go, what to do. And many times at this ashram and in the city, I hear of people who for years were very devoted to the teachings and made a great effort to arrive at a point of transformation. But then they went through a period of depression where things were nothing was moving in a positive direction for them. And they wondered if they were on the wrong track, if they perhaps had been misguided, misdirected. And so they come asking for direction, asking for guidance. Many teachers tell that after 50, 60 years of teaching, Krishnamurti said it, Nisargadatta Maharaj said it, Gurji said it, that after so many years of teaching, only a handful of people who not only understood intellectually, but who applied these teachings so that their lives and behavior were transformed. And that made us very sad to hear that, because first of all, Gurji made many sacrifices. His health, he gave so completely to his students and his disciples that his body felt that sacrifice. Although his energy was not diminished, his body had lost a lot of its vitality at the end. And it just made some of us, I know it made me feel, that's the best way to honor your teacher, is just to go the whole distance with him and for yourself. Not to give up because times are hard. The second reading comes a time when no matter how devoted we've been, how much effort we put into our study and our work and our meditation, there comes a time either when we're very sick, very ill, mentally, physically, or the finances are ill, very sick, and nothing seems to help. I can't find a job no matter what. Or we've reached a point when we're close to dying and we don't feel there's been that much of a change, and we're afraid the teachings haven't taken, and we become angry. I'm saying this because I have a friend going through that now. She was devoted to these teachings, very optimistic, until she got the feeling, being in her 90s, that she's about to go. And she's forgotten all the beautiful aspects of her life, how much the teachings opened up new beauty, new talent for her, new creations for her. But fear has taken over, and doubt. Doubt's a great enemy for yogis. Doubt whether you've been wasting your time. So here is somebody saying, again and again, everything I want to say seems unsayable. Question after question burns fiercely and then vanishes as quickly. Yet, there's a longing for you to point me in the right direction. Otherwise, here's the question, otherwise, if you don't do that, how can I know that I'm not already astray? Our receptionist, that lovely woman who was in the office today, Her name is Rebecca, but she's now Maitreyi. She asked for a name, and that's the name that came. She wrote, because I'm lefty, I can't write properly on the blackboard. She wrote the title, and the title is Going Astray with Joan Suvat. I said, could you make a bigger space between the title and with Joan Suvat? She said, why? I said, well, read it. She said, Going Astray with Joan Suvat. Oh, she said. So she made a bigger space. So this great teacher, Bhagavan Rajneesh, who was very good in answering questions having to do with the struggle, he said, you may have been astray, but certainly now you are not astray. If questions arise and disappear, that's a great symbolic indication. If you want to ask something and you find it unsayable, it means something from beyond the mind is longing to be expressed. So words fail. Mind cannot manage to bring it down to the world of language. I've heard many scholars come here, and when they asked Gurji something, these scholars who are so articulate, they never make any errors when they speak, and that's their life, speaking, communicating. But before Gurji, they started to stammer, because they were asking something beyond their storehouse of knowledge. They were asking something from their unknown, of the unknown. And Gurji just listened patiently, and sometimes when they just couldn't find the words, Gurji would say, what you are asking is this, he would say, without stammering, without hesitating. And this is what Osho was saying, that when you're asking of something of significance, you find it unsayable. And it means that something from beyond the mind is longing to be expressed. Words fail. Mind cannot manage to bring it down to the world of language. And this is something to be remembered. If you are becoming more silent, more peaceful, calmer, cool, it is an intrinsic indication that you are in the right direction. If things are otherwise, however, you're becoming more disturbed, more agitated, more anxiety-ridden, feeling more anguish, depressed, feeling as if you're falling apart, it's a sure indication that you have gone astray. I want you to remember the criterion yourself, because the criterion is intrinsic. It's not imposed from outside. It's not arbitrary. You can see very clearly, according to the symptoms. Silence, blissfulness, a kind of peace that passes understanding. Then you need not worry at all. These things can happen only on the right path. They never happen if you go astray. By the way, Rajneesh, when Rajneesh speaks about silence, he's not talking about, because he talked a lot, there are volumes of Rajneesh's talks. I think they go in the thousands, his talks. He's talking about the inner silence. If you're feeling that your mind is strangely quiet, it's not bringing up old tapes, old needs, old longings. That's the silence, if your life is becoming more silent. You know, Emil, whenever you come and stand like that, you can stay there, you look wonderful. But I always feel I have to be very careful now. Emil has come. Look at him. Look at him. He'll only sit down if he finds it interesting. Otherwise, no. I know, Emil. I love to tease you because you and I speak the same. I don't even know how long you've been there, but whenever I see you there, I say, oh, I have to be really on the ball tonight.
Always here in spirit.
Okay. A meal is here. So, I was talking about this, if you find your mind less chatty, less unsettled, that's the silence, that's the quiet Osho talks about. And only we can know that. If we become more agitated by our meditation, more agitated when we leave these programs, so that we can't even attend the programs because they're upsetting us. Our mind is rebelling against these Vedantic teachings. He said, then it means you've gone astray. If you are miserable, you're feeling meaningless, feeling no significance in life, if your life has no music in it, no poetry in it, no song in it, it's just a stale, dead dragging, then you have clear-cut symptoms in your hands that you are no more on the right path. The right path is just as if you are coming closer to a beautiful garden. All of these enlightened ones are poets. The right path is just as if you are coming closer to a beautiful garden. You may not see it. It may not yet be visible. But you can start breathing in that fragrance. You can start feeling the cool breeze. You can start hearing the birds in the trees singing far away. You can start seeing that things are becoming greener, livelier, lovelier. You are approaching closer to the garden. How many of you really felt today that this day was absolutely, exquisitely beautiful? Did you feel it? Unbelievable. The air, the sky, there was not a cloud in the sky when we were driving here. And we were talking a little bit, and then suddenly I said, look at the sky, compared to yesterday. This was like a reward that we survived yesterday. But everything, even the storm and the wind, were beautiful yesterday, provided you were indoors and no one was getting hurt. But all manifestations of nature are beautiful if we are quiet inside. If there's a storm inside, then we're not able to see the beauty in these manifestations of nature. He says, if everything's becoming greener, livelier, lovelier, it means you are approaching closer to the garden. But if things are becoming dry, losing all their juice for you, there's no juice in your life, and the trees are becoming bare, without foliage, without flowers, and the path is becoming sandier and sandier, and all coolness is disappearing. Instead, you are feeling hot and perspiring. Then know for sure you are moving towards the desert. This is exactly what happens in your inner world. There is a desert called the mind, and there is a garden called what? The heart. There's a desert called the mind that makes your path sandier and sandier, drier and drier. And there's also a garden called the heart. If you are moving towards the heart, everything is right, because the heart is the bridge to your being. The heart is not the goal, but it is a sure indication that you have left the mind behind, that the desert has been left behind. The heart joins the mind and being, just like a bridge. And as you start moving on the path of the heart, things start becoming more beautiful, more loving. You are surrounded by a new energy, a new life, as if you are getting rejuvenated every moment. Last Saturday, we came home in the rain from the ashram. It was a rainy night. And I'm remembering this now, Dharmadev. It was wet and we were rushing with all our things. We live in Westchester and we're surrounded by trees and falling branches and power outages when branches fall on the lines. But we were hurrying into the house and Dharmadev was ahead of me, carrying like a donkey. Wouldn't let me carry anything, but he was carrying everything. And suddenly he turned around. He said, "Joan, look how beautiful the leaves look in the sun, in the moonlight. See the dew, the rain on the leaves." And honestly, in the light of the moon, it was last week the moon? Week before, last week. In the light of the moon, the leaves, the wet leaves, were sparkling as though there were neon lights on them. And they lit up the whole path. Now, we were coming from the ashram. If we were coming from an auction of furniture, I'm sure we would have just hurried into the house. But we were so, lit up with the meditation, and you're our meditation too, your faces and your intensity, that even in the midst of, hurry and heavy bags, you're able to see when the mind is quiet, when the mind is silent, when the past is silent. Otherwise, you can look out a train window going through the most beautiful scenery, and we miss the whole thing because we're in the desert of the mind, not in the garden of the heart. And the heart is what? The bridge. It's not the goal. Our goal is not to live in the heart, not to live in that garden. Our goal is to return to the heart, because the heart is the bridge to our true beingness. As you start moving on the path of the heart, things start becoming more beautiful, more loving. You're surrounded by a new energy, a new life, as if you're getting rejuvenated every moment. The day you reach your center will be the experience of Satchit Anand. But before that experience of truth, Sat, consciousness, Chit, bliss, these small indications will help you on the path. They are the milestones. You are feeling things, he's talking to the person who questioned. You are feeling things that cannot be said. They have to be coming from the heart, because only the heart is without language. The heart is silence. It speaks in silence. You can say silence is its language, and you find it difficult to say them, because saying is the function of the mind. The feeling is in the heart, and the mechanism of expression is in the mind. So if something is arising in the heart, mind feels absolutely impotent. And this is good news, not bad. And the questions, you say, appear one after another, burn fiercely, and vanish as quickly. That's how it happens to every meditator. You don't have to ask. Even before you can ask the questions, they are no more. It means you are coming closer to the answer within yourself. It may not be very clear to you what is the answer, but the question disappears without torturing you, without becoming a nightmare for you, without being stubborn, persistent, harassing you to ask it. It shows you are enclosed in the mind. Mind knows only questions. The heart knows only answers. And the being, who could finish that sentence? The heart knows only answers, the mind knows only questions, and the being is, say it again? Well, in relation to the heart and relation to the mind, what is the being? Where is the being? Beyond, was it Karana? Yeah, beyond both. That's why the heart is the bridge, because the being is beyond the mind and the heart. This is so lovely, isn't it? Osho sometimes hits. The feeling is in the heart. The mechanism of expression is in the mind. And you say the questions appear one after another, burn fiercely, and vanish as quickly. That's how it happens to every meditator. You don't have to ask questions. Even before you can ask them, they are no more there. It means you are coming closer to the answer within yourself. It may not be very clear to you what is the answer, but the question disappears without torturing you, without becoming a nightmare. It's the questions that are bothering us, not finding the answer. The questions torment us. I run into every now and then someone who says, this question has been tormenting me the whole of my life. The one question, and I had one when I came to Gurdjieff. This question is bothering me the whole of my life. And Gurdjieff would answer it in 20 seconds. Like that. The question disappeared. The person wasn't sure he understood the answer, but at least here was an enlightened being who answered and showed him a completely different way of viewing what had tormented him. So in meditation, we may not get the answers, but how lovely that the questions finally disappear. All right, now. I have told you, oh wait. The heart knows only answers, and the being is beyond both. The being knows neither questions nor answers. It is simply beyond all kinds of duality. Remember what Gurdjieff said? We don't obtain truth, we become truth. This is what Osho is saying, synchronicity again. I've told you many times, but I love this incident so much because in the contemporary world, and particularly in the West, nothing like this has ever quite happened this way. In the East, it has been happening to the Sufis, to the Zen monks, to the masters of meditation. But in the West, this little incident stands as unique, just like a burning torch in a dark night. And the incident is about Gertrude Stein, just as we figured out this afternoon. Gertrude Stein, a great poetess, she's the one who wrote A Rose is a Rose is a Rose is a Rose, and won the Nobel Poets or something for writing that, because it was something that no one had ever written before. as a poem. A rose is a rose, is a rose, is a rose. Just what Osho's talking about, but that's not what the incident is. Gertrude Stein, a great poetess, is dying. She's breathing her last breaths. This actually happened, I looked it up. And she was loved by many people. She had many friends. She was a woman of tremendous creative qualities. Her poetry comes closest to the haikus of the Zen masters, or to the poetry of Kabir, Nanak, Farid. Her poetry has something essentially of the East. She had some glimpses of the mystic experience. Well, at the last moment, it's evening, and the sun is set and darkness is settling in. Gertrude Stein opens her eyes and asks, "What is the answer?" And those who have gathered to say goodbye to her are puzzled. Has she gone senile? Insane? Perhaps death has shocked her and she has lost her rationality? Certainly no man with a reasonable mind will ask, "What is the answer?" Because unless you've asked a question, asking what is the answer is very irrational. So there was silence for a moment. Then one very close friend asked, "But you have not asked the question. How can we answer?" Then Gertrude Stein had a faint smile and said, "Okay, so tell me, what is the question?" I love it so much. Well, if you don't like my question, what is the answer? I'll ask a question you do like. What is the question? She said, "Okay, so tell me then, what is the question?" And then she died. So they had no time left to say, "This question is as absurd as your first question. First you asked for the answer without asking the question. Now you're also asking the question from us. There are thousands and millions of questions. Who knows what question you want answered?" But in fact, Gertrude Stein was passing beyond mind when she asked, "What is the answer?" She was passing beyond the heart when she asked reluctantly, smilingly, "Okay, what is the question?" And without waiting for an answer, she passed beyond. It was one of the most beautiful deaths in the West, almost like a final poem. It's very difficult for people to have a beautiful life, but there have been people who have lived beautifully and died even more beautifully, because to them, death comes as a culmination, as a climax of life, as if the whole life becomes a flame of fire in a single moment, in total intensity, before disappearing into the universal. Who can take a guess when I received this audio from Surata, who does these videos all as a service, because they're going to be watched in the years to come. All the videos that are going on of the cultural events, of the classes, the programs, this will be the way to carry on Sri Brahmananda's teachings and all the great readings that we've had the privilege to read and listen to. But I send CDs out to people who have moved away from New York and miss these programs. But there's one person who will receive this first copy. The first one I will send it to. You heard about it tonight. Who's that? My 90-year-old friend, of course. It's like tailor-made for her. She needs this reminder that death is a climax of life. It's not the opposite of life. It's part of life. Probably the most or one of the most exciting parts. Climax of life. Gertrude Stein was not losing her mind in the sense, I have to read this. For some people, they have lived beautifully and they died even more beautifully, because to them, death comes as a culmination, as a climax of life, as if the whole life becomes a flame of fire, in a single moment, in total intensity, before disappearing into the universal. No, Gertrude Stein was not losing her mind in the sense that it is usually understood, but she was certainly going beyond mind, and she was also going beyond the heart. 2 more paragraphs. Beyond these 2 diametrically opposite centers in you is a being which is utterly innocent of any questions or of any answers. It is so fulfilled in itself, so completely contented, that there's nothing left to ask and there's nothing left to answer. My own understanding is that Gertrude Stein died enlightened. The West has no understanding of enlightenment. They simply thought she was going crazy. By the way, that doesn't mean she led an enlightened life. It just means at the very end, the wisdom came, the sudden. We're told all the time by the great masters, you don't have to be without weaknesses or sins or ignorance right up till the end. It's just important that you've tried. You've made the sincere effort to find out the truth of your life. And you got up as many times as you were knocked down. That deserves some grace. And Gertrude said the grace is given freely to those who sincerely persevered, no matter how many setbacks they received. So he's not saying that Gertrude Stein was enlightened throughout her life, not at all. But he's saying something happened, that she was very sincere in the way she lived. She lived probably caring for others in her way, from what I understand about goodness. But even if she didn't live that way, if cumulatively she had guilt, or after she fell from, let's say, fell from grace, she picked herself up and began from the beginning. Our teachers are very impressed when we suffer setbacks and go into severe doubt and depression, and then somehow we trust enough to get up and continue. I have a friend who, when I say I had a friend, and I would say, how are you? He said, I'm continuing to continue. And that's what he was doing very bravely too. Final paragraph. My own understanding, Rajni says, is that Gertrude Stein died enlightened. The West has no understanding of enlightenment. They simply thought she was going crazy. But it wasn't craziness. It was a moment of great celebration. What she could not attain in her life, she attained in her death. And she gave the same indications. No question, no answer, and you have arrived home. She didn't know the answer, and she said, I don't know the question. But it meant she saw the silliness of everything, you know? There is no question, there is no answer. We are just as we are, truth itself. I can see why he would tell that story again and again. I love it myself. Any questions about this? It's also, Gertrude Stein was a great sensualist. She loved indulging her senses. But in a way, rather than live a life of no indulgence, no gratification, no ecstatic pleasure, if we had to choose between the two, I would go for the excess of sensuality rather than the dry desert of no feeling. So, in the same way that we've read about thieves, rascals, who caught the attention of great enlightened gurus, and they were the first to be enlightened. Valmiki was a thief, but we all know he left his body in an enlightened state. So, as he says, the Western mentality really doesn't understand, as a people, enlightenment. The East has a little jump on us. That's why we love the mystic poets of Kabir, Hafiz, and Rumi and Ghali, because they're wild. These people are wild. Hafiz saying, every time a little dog comes up to me and licks my ear, I turn and whisper in his little ear, where have you been, my guru? Anybody who licks his ear or gives him any sense that he's loved, he sees it as a messenger of his guru. I'd rather have that than some dry poem from some poet who has never known love. It's all a question of being open to anything that can strike a match in our consciousness and light it for us. To be open, not to be judging, not to be criticizing, just to see what moves you, what opens your heart, because the heart is the bridge. Any questions about this? Because I have Job yet. Job, I couldn't read during the summer because it really is not a depressing piece. I know it's about Job, who lost everything. But we need to be reminded of the response he received as to why he had to go through all that. Because for every one of us, St. John of the Cross said it, every one of us sitting here, if it's not in our middle age or even our youth, it has to come. Maybe in the form of illness or terminal something. But we must pass through a dark night of the soul. It may have happened already for some of you. But we need shocks to wake us up, because obviously we've been sleeping. Otherwise we'd be enlightened by now. We've had every reason to be enlightened. So going back to Job, who is for us the symbol of a life that is intent on waking us up so that we can live eternally. A life of contentment keeps us asleep. We don't want to wake up when it's too good. So take a deep breath. And now as you breathe out, release all the language, all the words. This will only be 60 seconds. So feel yourself letting go and opening up to this now. Feeling it, perceiving it, imbibing it. Sometimes it only takes 1 minute to reconnect with your real life, your real home. I am that I am. That is our home. Krishna Devi, would you lead us in our traditional prayer? Thank you, Krishna Devi. And if some of you are feeling very high, that you may need a designated driver, take 2 cookies. Chocolate chip is a great way to come back to earth.